Throughout Mae Jemison's life, excelling in one area has never been enough. Sure, we know her as the first African-American woman in space, but there's so much more that makes Jemison extraordinary. Mae grew up in Chicago, where like most kids, she dreamed of being a fashion designer, archaeologist, or astronaut. She decided at an early age she would go to space. Astronauts back then were exclusively white and male, but those aboard the USS Enterprise on Star Trek were different, particularly Lieutenant Uhura, and that allowed young Mae to see someone that looked like her in space. Even as a kid, she was extraordinary. She graduated high school at 16 and went to Stanford. She double majored in chemical engineering and African and Afro-American studies. During her junior year, she had to decide if she should be a doctor or a professional dancer, which were both legitimate options for her. She chose medical school and even worked in a Cambodian refugee camp in Thailand. And she didn't just become a doctor. In 1983, she became the Area Peace Corps Medical Officer for Sierra Leone and Liberia in West Africa. She managed all the healthcare for the Peace Corps, wrote manuals for self-care, researched rabies with the CDC, and was in charge of medical care for the US Embassy. And she was 27. After 2 years there, she returned to America and began working as a general practitioner in Los Angeles and took graduate-level engineering classes at the same time. And even then, she was still like, I could do more. So she applied to become an astronaut in 1985 and wasn't deterred when the Challenger exploded the next year. She reapplied and was selected out of 2,000 applicants to train to be an astronaut.
And liftoff of Space Shuttle Endeavour.
September 12, 1992, Jemison made history when she took off aboard the Endeavour for 8 days in space. As a science mission specialist, her job was to conduct experiments on the crew on motion sickness and bone cells. After her big dream was realized, Jemison decided to take it easy as an environmental studies professor at Dartmouth College, starting an educational nonprofit, a science camp, and serving as principal for 100 Year Starship, an initiative working to travel beyond our solar system in the next 100 years. Oh, and in 1993, she guest starred on Star Trek: The Next Generation. Jemison has gone back and forth on this whole role model thing. She didn't really want to be the poster child for black female astronauts, but she did want young girls, and the old white men that would hire them someday, to see that your race or gender doesn't limit you.
Hi, Dr. Jemison.
Hi, Dr. Jemison.
Hello, Dr. Jemison.
3, 2, 1, blast off! Go space, go space, go, go, go space.
I grew up during the 1960s, and the United States didn't have women astronauts. There were no people of color in the astronaut program. I just assumed I would go up.
Why did you want to be an astronaut when other women weren't doing it?
Because I wanted to go into space. It's really quite simple. So that was one of the jobs I could do. I just wanted to be a scientist. I wanted to learn about the world. And I always assumed I'd go into space.
Now, my question for you is, what did you do to become an astronaut? Bye!
Being an astronaut, you have lots of different things to do. You have to learn how to do photography. You have to learn geology and geography. You have to learn how all the systems work. You learn how to fly. So it's this really varied job. We learn scuba diving. So it's very physical, and at the same time, it has a lot of intellectual components.
What is it like to be looking at the universe knowing it never ends?
I want you to do something for me. I want you to go outside and look up, because you're looking into space and infinity. When you're up above the Earth's atmosphere, there's a little less light pollution, and so you see the stars more abundantly. But remember, right now, we're on a spaceship. I felt connected with infinity. I felt connected with the entire universe when I was in space. And I feel that connection now. And I hope one day you'll look up and do that as well. I grew up in the 60s. I lived on the south side of Chicago, and I was a young girl who loved to stare up at the stars. I imagined myself going there. I studied all the things about the Apollo program. I knew what mission was going to take place when, what it was supposed to accomplish. I decided to go to medical school because I wanted to do something called biomedical engineering. While I was in medical school, I had the opportunity to go and work in a Cambodian refugee camp. I went on to study group in Cuba. I worked with the flying doctors in East Africa. But I still wanted to go into space, so I applied. I picked up the phone. I called down to Johnson Space Center. I said, I would like an application to be an astronaut. They didn't laugh. I turned in the application. There may be a certain naivete when I say, when I applied to the astronaut program, I didn't even think about the fact of whether I would be the first African-American woman in space or anything like that. It didn't even cross my mind. I wanted to go into space. I couldn't have cared if there had been 1,000 people in space before me or whether there had been none. I wanted to go. I thought it was important to take to space with me things that represented people who sometimes are not included. So I took a poster of Mae Jemison performing the dance cry. I took up a Bundu statue, which was for the Women's Society in West Africa. I took up a flag for the Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority, the oldest African-American women's sorority in the United States, because they hadn't been included, and I thought that was an important thing to do. For me, the experience was one that made me feel very connected with the universe. I felt that my being was as much a part of this universe as any star, as any comet. It helped me to recognize that right now, we're in space. This Earth is part of that universe. That was my grand connection. And then I looked down and I saw Chicago. I thought about the little girl who had assumed she would go into space. What would my younger self have thought if she met me? And I think she would have been tickled. When I was a little girl, 8th grade, I pitched a fit in order to get my mother to enroll me in dance classes. I was beside myself, and she did. I wanted to be dancing because it was exhilarating, because it was fun. It was another way of creativity. Of course, I still love dance. I don't do it as much, but I hope maybe these days I could do Dancing with the Stars, right? Somebody's gonna suggest, I don't know. We could try that out. A 12-year-old girl once asked me, how did dance contribute to your success as an astronaut? And her class laughed, right? Because they didn't see the connection. But I told her, you know, it really did make a difference. Dancing trains you in terms of practice, in terms of memory, physical skills and coordination, and just being thick-skinned. So when I think about the arts and the physical sciences, I think that they're both parts of creativity. But they're different because of what they express. I think of the physical sciences as our ability to try to understand the world around us, the universe as it's experienced by everyone, and then trying to influence that universe. And I think of the arts as our attempt to have other people understand our personal perspective of the universe. The arts and the sciences, they provide a fuller understanding of the universe and the world around us. They provide a fuller communication together of what and who we are as people.